Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Bakukal Deep Cult the 4th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my spoiler review of Beyond the Moons. Now, I will be spoiling this story, so if you don't want to know the plot, if you don't want to know all the minutiae of all the details of all the Spelljammer stuffs, don't watch this video. Go do something else. Go knit a hat, read the book, come back, put the hat on, and listen then. You'll be warmer and more ready for the review. So I don't know what I'm doing. All right. I'd like to take a moment and thank the members of this channel and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the links in the description below. You can also pick up Dragonlance gaming materials by using my affiliate link. And that's all the way from 1st edition to 3rd. that's kind of it. 1st, 2nd, Saga, 3rd edition. But who knows what could happen? 5th edition could happen. This year, perhaps, is rumored to be a thing. But until then, how about the review? So the way this works is I give you my pre-written review, broken up by random thoughts and addendums and just Adam-isms. And at the end, if you have any questions or comments, throw them up in the chat and I'll address them then, and we'll just sort of have a little bit of fun. It is Friday, Slange. Let's have a good time. Got nothing else going on if you're watching this. Most other people in their lives have things going on. We are different than most other people. And not just in this way. All right, let's get to it. We open with the spaceship Penumbra under attack. Captain Hemar orders the ship to land on the nearby planet of Krynn, and it crash lands in Teldin Moore's field. Now, Teldin is a farmer who served as a Mule Skinner in the War of the Lands, burying the dead after the Battle of the High Clerist Tower and the Siege of Kalaman. He returned to his father and grandfather's homestead in Estwilde for a quiet and simplicity farm life. I wrote this and clearly poorly. His elderly neighbor, Liam Shal, had just helped him work his melon field when they spotted something in the sky in the distance. Now, Liam heads home, and a little while later, a spaceship crashes into Teldin's home, decimating the field in the process. A female comes stumbling out of the crash, and after learning that none of her crew survived, gave Teldin her cloak, saying that he needs to keep it away from the Niyogi and deliver it to the creators. She immediately dies upon giving it to him, and Teldin's completely confused about this entire thing, just sort of in shock and awe. He can only understand her after she had cast a spell on him, so at first it was all just mumbo-jumbo, right? So the ship begins to go up in flames as this large gif, which is basically a hippopotamus human, like minotaurs are like bull humans. Anyway, his name is Trooper Gamja. He's a soldier assigned to the ship, and he exits seeing Teldin hovering over his dead captain. Fearing the worst, he accuses Teldin of murder and tries to shoot him with his flintlock pistol. The pistol blows up in the dude's face, and he passes out. This is the first of many hints that this is the cloak's doing, that the author never actually clarifies at all, nor, other than just these strange things happening, it's left to the reader to sort of piece things together. I'm of two minds about this, clearly. Either A, it's a wonderful plot device that the cloak can literally do anything at this point, and it's just sort of protecting whomever the wearer may be. Or B, it's just random happenstance, and we're just left to believe that it could possibly be the cloak. But aside from the Penumbra, the ship that just crash landed in this dude's farm, crushing his home, that's the only other thing that's sort of out there that's a possibility. And there's a lot of other instances in this story where that type of thing happens, where it's not explained how, why, what, where, whom, whatever. We just have to sort of make the assumption that, oh, it was the cloak. Now, again, this can be seen as poor writing, or it can be seen as wonderful intrigue. It's up to you, the reader. I'm leaning on intrigue at this point. Teldin ends up hog-tying the now unconscious Gif and dragging him to safety along with Captain Hemar's corpse. He goes back into the wreck searching for more survivors, but everyone has died. At this point, we know a couple things about Liam. He's an ex-soldier, he's a veteran, who only left home because he didn't want to just be a farmer, and then as soon as he got away from home, realized that maybe that wasn't so bad after all. He wanted to be the farmer that he always ran away from his whole life. I can identify with sort of country living a little bit in that same aspect, wanting to get away and then coming back and wanting to be a part of it. And the other thing is that he's genuinely a good person. Like, Adam, would not run into a flaming spaceship that just crushed my house looking for possible survivors. They're the crazy bad guys in the scenario. They crushed my house. The scenario behind it means nothing. But this guy, being the hero of the story, is obviously a much better person than I am. And better for the story at large. All right, so Liam comes running back after seeing the flames, and as Gamja wakes, he seems to be peaceful after everything, so here's the deal. Gamja wanted to kill him as soon as he realized that his captain was dead, and he assumed that Teldin was the murderer. As soon as Teldin explains everything to him, Gamja's like, oh, okay, well, I give you my word of honor that I won't murder you anymore. Now that I know the truth, I'm not going to overreact, and I get it. And Teldin's like, okay, and just cuts him loose. Like, it was just like, I don't believe you. You're a hippopotamus, man, and you could kill me, but you gave me your word of honor, so that must mean something, right? Literally a spaceman out of the sky. And he's just like, hey, you say the word honor, and we have that word too, so it must be true. Just some of these books, man. All right. So Gamja now, or I feel like I'm saying his name. I want to say Ganja and I want to say Gumja, but it's actually Gomja. Gamja. Gamja is a soldier, very much like Bloodsea Minotaur style, right? So he lives, his word is his bond. He lives by his own code of honor. He is a warrior culture, these gif. And again, I don't know anything about Spelljammer, and so I'm just learning it from this novel. Quick side note, amongst side note, is that this Spelljammer book is one of 6 that is the entirety of all Spelljammer books ever written. So literally, this sextet of novels is all that exists for novels of Spelljammer. And I find that interesting that it began in Krynn. Kind of like that. Now, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I love Dragonlance, and so it's kind of a home team situation. Mad respect, Cook. Anyway, so now Gamja defers to him as the leader. The gift seems to be similar to minotaurs in the sense of honor and their word. They look similar to hippos in the head rather than bulls of minotaurs. So Liam once again returns home after Gamja buries the dead. Okay, so I skipped over this because I'm sort of riffing here. Liam, the neighbor that helped Teldin sort of work on his melon field that was just destroyed, that saw something in the distance, as soon as he saw the crash happen from his farm, ran over to find out what was going on with Teldin. And once he realized that Teldin had everything under control and Gamja wasn't going to like murder the two of them, then Gamja was like, I need to bury my dead. And so he's like, okay, well, you watch him bury the dead while I sort of try to process what the hell is going on here. After the dead are buried, then his neighbor goes back to his home. Now, after this point, they need to go sleep. Gamja says that he's going to watch over him as he sleeps because he's sworn duty. I mean, it's not like this Wookiee life debt or anything like that. So I don't really know why Gamja is immediately deferring to him as his leader. He's clearly just a regular farmer dude, but he said he was a Mule Skinner in war, and so Gamja, not having any context for what Mule Skinner means, he thinks it's literally skinning animals. That must be like a warrior thing. So he's like, oh, you're a great warrior. I must follow you. And one of the things that's great about this novel is that you get this wonderful exposure to Krynn, to Dragonlance, from something that has no context at all. And it's like living Dragonlance fresh, vicariously through this alien, which is very, very cool. And I never thought about it before until I was actively reading it, and I realized how cool it was. Anyway, so he watches Teldin while he's sleeping, and that's when the Niyogi come into play. Now, the Niyogi are the creatures that shot down the spaceship, the Penumbra, that crashed into Teldin's home, right? So they came in, they're looking for something. Now, we can assume at this point, and again, this is just context, it must be the cloak they're looking after. Not only is the series titled the Cloakmaster Cycle, or something that, yeah, it's Cloakmaster Cycle, but also the cloak was given to him by the captain. So it must be something powerful, something meaningful, or whatever. Anyway, the Niyogi come and land, and the Niyogi are basically like spiders with an eel head. It's weird, I know. It sounds really crazy, but it sounds like a Monster Manual 2 type creature. If you're a D&D nerd, you know what that means. But the Niyogi have slaves, Umber Hulks, which are like these monstrous, behemoth-bodied, beetle-faced creatures, right? So the Umber Hulks carry this alien spider-eel hybrid around. They're like the brains. It immediately made me think of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's my era. That's what I thought of. Anyway, they come down searching the wreckage, and Teldin and Gamja are too terrified to do anything about it, right? So they're hiding away, and Gamja tells Teldin that the Niyogi are a destroyer of worlds. Like, they leave no survivors, they completely destroy worlds. So you're immediately like, okay, these things are bad. Like, they're going to destroy Krynn, right? Unless they find what they're looking for. No one knows what they're looking for. It's just us, the reader, that's making the assumption at this point. So they're hiding. The Niyogi continue searching for clues, contextual clues of where this cloak is gone. And so they go off to the farmer's house, right? Because the farmer came over across the field to help his friend, and then he went back home. So there's tracks leading back to this dude's house. And so immediately picking up on this, Teldin and Gamja go racing over to the farmer to try to stop these Niyogi from murdering his friend, and they're too late. Not only was the farmer killed, but it was his wife, his 2 kids, and all of his livestock murdered and consumed on the spot. So we know that the Niyogi are world eaters and that they consume their prey fresh. Terrifying creatures from space of no less. Just horrible, right? So they bury the bodies because he doesn't want to leave them there, of course, just like half consumed and stuff. They see no signs of the Niyogi, so the Niyogi must have left and gone somewhere else. So by the time they get back to his farm, the Niyogi ship is gone, and it's just them. And so they sort of scavenging the ship. They find this, it looks like treasure chest, basically, where they open it up and they see a bunch of like star chart books, which Gamja takes, and some like 2 pistols. So, of course, Spelljammer apparently has flintlock pistol technology. So there's 2 pistols there and a bunch of knives and stuff. At this point, we know that that Teldin is a straight up asshole to Gamja for no reason. And it's like a real problem as a reader. I don't get why he's being such a dick to this alien. Like, I understand, like, your life is ruined, they messied up your day, but clearly something bigger is happening around you, and there's no reason to be a total asshole to this alien who is clearly helping you with everything you're asking him to help you with. So just don't be a dick. Words to live by, people. Don't be a dick. All right. So they get back, and they're trying to figure out what to do. Next morning, they go to take a bath, and Teldin realizes that this cloak that this woman gave him is annoying, and it's like flapping around behind him, and he gets into the water, and it shrinks up so that it doesn't get wet in the water. He immediately realizes that, oh, this is a magical cloak, and he starts thinking about it, and the cloak will shrink and extend at his own desires, right? So he's getting, yeah, Bidas, thanks for joining live, by the way. Great to see you. They are not nice at all. So he's clearly like, he can control the length of this cloak, and it's got properties he doesn't understand, but he's stuck with it. And his only goal in this so far is to get it off and to fix his farm. That's it. He doesn't care about Gamja. He wants to get rid of him at his earliest opportunity. So the only way to fix up his farm, now that everything he owns is destroyed, is by going to Calaman, where his cousins live. He stayed there and sort of spent some time with them during the War of the Lance, and so he wanted to go there, ask if they'll help foot the bill for him to fix his farm, right? So what does Gamja do? Gamja follows him. He comes with. What else is he going to do? He's literally stranded on an alien world, and you're the only person he knows. Of course he's going to follow you, and he's already deferred to you as a leader, so act like one. Teldin, dick. Don't be a Derek, Teldin. Jeez. So Teldin just like marches off. He's like, does like a Harry and the Hendersons, like, go away, throws a rock at him. I don't want to see you anymore. You're not part of my life. You ruined my life, stuff like that. And Gamja's like, fine, well then I'm going to go to Calaman too, and I'm just going to go parallel to you and not follow you and be a part of your party. So he's like, whatever, of course, we'll go together then, right? They find a farmer with a wagon train and his son going up to Calaman, so they sort of hitch a ride with him. And in order to sort of excuse Gamja's look, Teldin makes him like wrap a cloak around his head, and they say that he was tortured by the Dragon High Lords, much like the Draconians were. And so it sort of gives an out to any weird-looking creature, like, oh, you poor soul. You were tortured by the Dragon High Lords, and they're all evil. We all know they're evil because they were defeated by good, so clearly we understand, and it must be a true story. Like, no one questions anything. So this obvious alien just sort of is, like, going everywhere. Anyway, they get to I'm not even going to read my notes anymore. I'm just going to riff on this. They get to Calaman, and they're searching around, and they can't find his cousin. They go to the cobbler's shop that his cousin used to own, and there's this like wretched old lady there who's like, he doesn't live here anymore. He left. Get out of here. It reminds me of like old, like Oliver era, Oscar Wilde Oliver era England, where it's just like toothless and disease filled. That's what Calaman is apparently. So he doesn't have his cousin there anymore. And now he's like hands in the air. What am I going to do? I have this cloak I can't get off around my neck. It's literally stuck. He's no way of getting it off. He has this alien that's following him around. His farm, his whole livelihood is destroyed. And so in an act of desperation, they sort of go to an inn and just start drinking. Well, it turns out that one of his old war buddies named Van Dorm is in the bar, and he comes up. He's like, Teldin Moore? He's like, Van Dorm? Wow. So Van Dorm pretty much took him under his arm when he was in the War of the Lance and taught him how not to get himself killed, basically, looking after him. He's like, look, I need some mercenaries for a job. We're going to be heading over to Palanthas in the morning. If you want to join us, it's money. It'll get you some Skrilla in your pocket, some steel in your pocket. And Teldin's like, yeah, I'd love to. And Gom just sort of like comes along because what else is he going to do? He needs money too, and he's definitely a warrior culture type alien. So they meet in the morning, they ride off a couple days, they get to the High Clerist Tower, they work their way through the High Clerist Tower, and they're in the canyon that goes down into Palanthas, and nightfall. So they have to sort of find a side trail off into the mountains and make camp. Gamja wakes up Teldin in the middle of the night as Van Dorm and some of his lieutenants leave in the middle of the night. They follow them, overhear them saying that they need to kill the alien, and they need to take Teldin to their benefactor. So someone hired Van Dorm to bring the cloak to them, and they know that Teldin's the one with the cloak. Clearly, it must be the Niyogi. How did the Niyogi get to Calaman or know to go to Calaman or anything like that? Who cares? It's just a plot hole that we just don't ever address at all, ever. Literally. It's weird. So, as soon as Teldin and Gamja figure this out, they're like, let's just leave. And so they just leave. However, before they go, there was a scout Draconian that overheard that whole conversation that left. And the lieutenants are like, it was just a Draconian, let them go. They have nothing to do with our job, and they're not going to threaten us because clearly we have a mercenary party here. We can handle a few Draconians. So as Gamja and Teldin are leaving toward Palanthas at as fast as they can possibly go, they run into this Draconian party. And the lead Draconian, an Aurak named... this is the problem when you jump ahead, is that you you lose your place. Anyway, there's an Aurak who's the leader who looks at Teldin and he's like, you're a Draconian. You're a Baz Draconian. Get over here. What are you doing in the middle of the wilds? You need money. You're going to work for us. We're going to hijack this human that this other human mercenary party is trying to get for money, and we want in on the action. So now there's two groups. There's the mercenary group led by Van Dorm, his supposed old war buddy, and this weird Draconian who just assumes that human Teldin Moore is a Baz Draconian. Again, no explanation, must be the cloak. For whatever reason. I mean, there's a lot of really weird plot holes in this. Unexplained phenomena is another way of saying it. So, very professional by us. So the Draconians are like, who the hell is this Draconian? They're like fighting amongst each other, trying to figure out where this rando Draconian came from. And meanwhile, Gamja is just hiding in the bushes because he had time to do that, and no one saw him, this hulking brute of an alien. And at the same time, we hear horse hooves, and here comes Van Dorm and his mercenary party, who sees Teldin as a human surrounded by Draconians and not being attacked or anything. So he's like, there he is! Get him! And so this battle just out of nowhere just happens between these two mercenary factions trying to capture the same dude. One of them knows who he is, the other one doesn't. The whole time, Teldin's trying to get out of it because he doesn't want to hurt his old war buddy, and he doesn't want to get killed because he's clearly not a fighter. He was a Mule Skinner in the war. That just means you bury the dead and take care of the animals, right? So he doesn't really know what he's doing. So he ends up getting caught by Van Dorm, who then, after they defeated the Draconians and took heavy losses, by the way, Gamja comes in with his pistol, shoots the dude dead, and threatens them all, saying, you need to give me Teldin and your horses, we're going to leave. And so there's a little bit of like finger shaking, scolding going on between Teldin and Van Dorm. They leave them without their horses, and they take their horses and ride to Palanthas. They get to Palanthas because the whole point of why they're going there, other than to make money, of course, is to find out how to get this damned cloak off his neck. And the only person that he can think of that would know would be Astinus of the Library of Palanthas. So they get to Astinus, or they get to the library, worm their way in with a book, a star book that Gamja kept from the treasure chest at the very beginning of the novel that intrigued the aesthetics there. They get in, talk to Astinus briefly, and Astinus is like, look, my knowledge begins and ends with Krynn, so anything out there in space I know nothing about and I cannot help you, but I do know that the Gnomes have had spelljammers visit them before, so the Gnomes of Mount Nevermind would be able to help you. Now get out. And so on their way out, an aesthetic comes running up to the aesthetic guiding them out, and they're like, look, there's some people out front who want these people right here desperately bad. They're threatening to break in and take them. What do we do? And so they're like, look, we're going to give you a 10 count to run out the back door so we can placate these guys and you can get off to Mount Nevermind. So they go out, get in a room in the some random local inn near the port, and Teldin leaves Gamja in the inn because clearly it's becoming a problem having an alien wandering around and having to make up all these weird stories about why this alien exists. And so Teldin just goes down to the docks himself. It takes him a little while to figure out how the docks work because, again, he's a farmer. He knows nothing about ships or anything like that. And this is a point about this story that I really, really appreciate because it comes up in a couple different places. Teldin's just a regular guy. He doesn't know anything. He's never been formally educated in anything except for how to live a farm life. You know, his wartime experience is the first time he ever learned anything about anything other than war. So there's a really great conversation between Gamja and Teldin on the way to Calaman where he's like, well, what planet is this? And Teldin's like, what do you mean, what planet? I don't know what you mean. What planet? What's a planet? He's like, this rock that we're on, what is this rock called? He's like, this is Ansalon. He's like, no, the planet. He's like, I don't know what planet, he has no idea what a planet is. And I love that they dropped that in there because why would he know what a planet is? The idea that some random farmer with zero education would know anything about worlds and space and heavenly bodies moving through time, through space-time due to gravity and like, there's no way he would have any idea about that. And the fact that they just snuck it under the door, they're like, look, this is what every person on Krynn is. They don't know what Krynn is. No one knows what Krynn is because there's no context for Krynn as a planet. I'm sure there's entire groups of people on Krynn that are flat earthers because they just don't know, you know? I love that. Anyway, there's a whole flat earther sect of like the evil gods that are trying to corrupt people of Krynn. Like the Seeker movement was all flat earthers too, probably. Anyway, I'm going off tangent here. So like he doesn't know anything about ships, right? And so he goes down to the harbor through a little hard knocks, a little bit of knuckle dragging. He figures out he needs to go to this port master to figure out what ships are going over to Clerist to get to Mount Nevermind Flat crinners, that's what it is, Bitus. Thanks, man. So he finally finds this elven ship that's going. And he goes to the elven ship. And he's like, hey, we need passage to Clerist. And they're like, you're a human. He's like, yeah. We're elves. Yeah. We're not going to take you. You're human. We're elves. So this brought a really wonderful idea. Like, outside of exposure of other species, there's no reason to be biased against those species. So the elves that run that ship are biased against humans because they've had interactions with humans. Teldin, who was in the War of the Lands, was led by a golden general, an elf, has no bigoted feelings toward elves at all. He has no feelings at all about them other than they have a ship that he wants to get on. I loved that aspect of it. This whole book brought this really wonderful sense of racial engagements that's not always based on just generic fantasy bigoted tropes. All of Dragonlance, arguably, is based around bigoted fantasy tropes. The dwarves hate everyone. The elves hate humans. Ogres hate elves. It's, like, why? Well, let's make up a story why, but just because that's how it's always been in all fantasy. And that's the extent of it. And we're just like idiot fantasy readers like, oh, okay, that's what Tolkien did, so everyone else must do it too. This actually sets up a situation where we're like, well, why? Why does he have to hate them? He's a human who's a farmer who has no problem with any elves. Why would he hate them? I just loved that little note. And it didn't lean into it. It didn't shine a light on it. It's just something I picked out and I really appreciated. So they literally just flat out reject him. So he's just decimated. He doesn't know how he's going to get to Mount Nevermind. If he can't get to Mount Nevermind, he can't get this stupid cloak off his neck. And he's going to be followed around by this alien for the rest of his life unless he can get to Mount Nevermind, right? So he's sitting in the middle of the street, just sort of beside himself. People start throwing coins at him because he looks terrible. He's a farmer, so clearly he doesn't have any money. His fanciest thing is the cloak that he's hidden this whole time. So he looks like a beggar. Then he spies one of Van Dorm's lieutenants watching him. So this whole time he's like, I need to get to Mount Nevermind. No one's helping me. What am I going to do? Just sort of rambling like a crazy person. Probably another reason why people are throwing coins at him. Then he starts yelling at the Palanthians that are like, hey, you can't be in front of my shop begging for money. Get away from here. He's like, I'm not doing anything. You don't understand. He's sort of losing his mind. He notes the lieutenant, and then he takes off through the streets of Palanthas. He doesn't want to get caught by them because they want him murdered or they want to take his cloak. If he could take the cloak off at this point in the story, he'd gladly give it to him, but he can't. And so the only way to take it off would be to kill him. He chooses life, and I have to respect him for that. So he runs and he loses them in Palanthas. Then he starts following them back to their, after hours of them searching for him, he's sort of following them. He follows them back to their hideout. That's where he sees the Niyogi talking to Van Dorm, saying, and then the lieutenant comes in and says, hey, look, he needs to go to Clerist. I don't know why. He just says he needs to go to Mount Nevermind with the gnomes. I overheard him screaming that, but we lost him. Sorry. That lieutenant is immediately murdered, chopped in half by a Umber Hulk at the request of the Niyogi, who are like, we don't care. Now we know where he's going. How do we get there? And they're like, well, it's to the southwest of us right here. Just sort of go to the southwest. You take a ship and you go through water and then you're there. And they're like, all right, we don't need any more. Now you all die. So literally the Niyogi murder the people that were helping them simply because they already have the information they need. So they don't need you anymore. No money, no nothing, just death. This whole time Teldin's watching in shock and horror. And then he sneaks away, finds Grom, and he's like, we're getting out of here tonight. This is insanity. So he grabs Gamja and they stow away on that elven ship that rejected them earlier. Of course they get caught, but by the time they get caught, there's this weird elven custom about if someone's already on your ship, you have to do them the honor of letting them continue on your ship. Never heard of it before. Plot device that makes no sense, but okay, it works. So clearly the young woman, the first mate, who's the daughter of the ship captain, hates humans, rejected him outright the first time, and doesn't want him on the ship. She wants to throw him overboard. Her father won't let him, and so she puts him to work working him hard. And the whole time, Gamja is also teaching him how to fight, because he clearly doesn't know how to fart. Well, I'm sure he knows how to fart. He doesn't know how to fight. He's a farmer, right? I'm speaking quickly because I'm trying to get through this. This is a long story. And the story's not long. It's just these videos can get a little tedious and long. So I want to make sure to sort of wrap it up as quickly as possible, which would have been just reading it. But I loved this story. I got to be honest. I had a really good time reading this. It was only like 4 days. It's a very short book. It's just over 300 pages. So it's not long, but I just blew through it because I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed it. So they pretty much just put on as like workers on the boat. It doesn't give you the boat details that like the Sea Wolf by Jack London gives you, but it does give you some, interesting little tidbit notes and stuff, it makes it more of a believable experience as a reader that they are on the boat doing work that would be done. But also, there's this wonderful give and take between these elves and these humans. Some of the elves are learning to respect them, even though they think the alien's weird. They're sort of respecting him for his strength and his desire to be a hard worker and stuff. And you knew first off, at least I did, like right when you first had them meet, and he met the first mate, which is that female elf, and he noted how beautiful she was because all elves are just incredibly beautiful, apparently. I want to meet an ugly elf. Can we just have one story where there's just like a butt ugly elf, like hit every ugly stick on the way down the tree in Sylvanesty? Like every just and she is just butt ugly. Can we just have one? They've all got to be just gorgeous? I just feel like there's a misrepresented group of ugly elves out there that's like, hey, that's a stereotype, okay? We got some of us ugly people too. We got some horse faces, just like everyone else. I don't know, underrepresented group. Okay. So then the ship is literally attacked by blood sea minotaurs on the other side of the continent. Now, they weren't led by the Niyogi, which was my first guess, like, why the hell are blood sea minotaurs out there? But the explanation in the book is that, well, draconians are such a force over in the Blood Sea that it drives some Minotaur pirates to go over to the other sea. And I'm like, that's a pretty loose story for a long boat ride, is all I'm saying. It doesn't really hold water, that story. That pirate story. But anyway, the girl goes overboard. The first mate, the elven woman, goes overboard. Teldin goes after her. And again, we saw it straight at the front. They hate each other at first sight. They're going to learn to love each other. It's just, that's how stories work. If you have someone straight up hating you in the story, in the second act, they're going to love you and you guys are going to be making sweet babies. That's how Tanis was born in some stories. So she goes overboard. He dives in after her. And this is a point where it says in the story, he loses strength and he loses consciousness, but he lifts up out of the water. Okay, so it's got to be the cloak, right? Like, what else is it? It's got to be the cloak. Why not just say that the cloak rescued him? Like, I don't understand why it's some big mystery. We're the reader. You don't have to keep it a mystery from us. You can tell us everything, man. Keep it a mystery from the other characters, not us. It drives me crazy. So much vague references all the time. Ugh. So he pulls her out of the water. They get pulled out. It turns out the captain's a red robe mage, and he created this big fire shield between the two ships, which is really the only thing, and Gamja's war training that helped repel the Minotaur pirate invaders. So they basically just barely make it away and get to Clerist. And the elf female, they had a big dinner and they apologized for the racial biases that they had. And she literally kissed him and said, look, if you're done with the gnomes, we're going to be back in Clerist. Wait for me and you can come on the ship and we can be together. Like she was DTF. And he was just like, I got to see a short gnome. So peace. I would have stayed with the ship. What? You got a beautiful elven girl who desperately desires you. You've got this kick-ass magical cloak that won't let you die. Who cares if you got this cool warrior buddy following you around? Just stay on the ship, man. Make some half-elf babies. Live a good life. But he doesn't. He goes to Mount Nevermind, and it's everything you'd ever expect from a gnome story from this point out. I don't know how many times as a storyteller, and I have to temper this with the knowledge that this is written for Spelljammer audience, not for a Dragonlance audience. You could make the argument that this is a Dragonlance story because it's literally entirely set in Dragonlance world. There's just tiny little speckles of Spelljammer in it, which is why I really enjoyed it, because it was a new perspective on a Dragonlance story. But it is a Dragonlance story. But this was written for a different fan base, someone who wanted to step outside of Dragonlance and do some spacefaring, right? So why not... I don't know. He went in such detail about how annoying Teldin found the gnomes that we'd already gone through that with every Dragonlance story dealing with a gnome before. I just don't want to retread that old ground again. And he hammered it home so hard that I started getting pissed off on behalf of the gnomes. Like, all right, dude, we get it. You don't like us. Like, you don't have to keep writing these paragraphs about it. Like, we're different. Deal with it, man. It was really frustrating. And coupled with that and the hatred or animosity between Teldin and Gamja until they got into that elven ship, it didn't really make sense, and it was just a little too heavy-handed. So anyway, they get to the gnome place, and Teldin is sent to get his cloak examined by the Magician's Guild to see if they can undo the clasp to take it off. And Gamja went to the Spelljammer Guild to see if he could get a ship and get off of Krynn. So we're staying with Teldin the whole time, and the gnomes are spending a full day examining it and going into committee and arguing about different ways of taking it off and stuff, which was a lot of fun for me anyway. And they ended up coming to the conclusion, like, we're going to have to take off your head to see if we could take off the cloak, but don't worry, because the Healers Guild has a really good theory about taking people's heads off. They haven't really worked out how to put them on again, but I'm sure they'll come up with something good. And Teldin is like, I'm out! I can't take it! I can't take anymore. You're not taking my head off. I can't even understand what you're saying. I'm out. And he just stomps off down the hall. And I was just like, yeah, how else would anyone react when the only solution to your problem is we're going to take your head off? No, that's not a logical solution. Not even arguably for a gnome. I thought it was hilarious. So he goes off in search of Gamja. He finds... Gamja, and he learns that they actually have a Spelljammer ship that they've been crafting, but it's missing an engine piece. And so they're like, look, this is kind of where we part then. They're going to develop the engine. You're going to get your ship. You're going to go off into space, and I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to go try to get my farm back together. I'm not going to let them take my head off. So I guess that's the end of our story. So Gamja's like, look, you can't leave me. Like, you're my leader. He's like, all right, well, then I promote you to leader. You're a Sergeant Gamja now. Congratulations. And there's this moment where Gamja's been nothing but 100% honest and invested in this situational relationship up to this point. He genuinely has learned to care about Teldin, not just as a leader, but as another person that he's just experienced war and journey and travel with, right? They've looked after each other and they've had each other's back, and it's a friend. And there's this wonderful moment where they're like, bye. Like, it was really nice meeting you. I'm sorry, it was a horrible situation, but we've gone through so much together. I'm kind of going to miss you, Goodbye. So there's this wonderful, heartfelt moment. And then, they go to bed, and in the middle of the night, they're woken up by gnomes busting their door, screaming at the top of their lungs, we're being attacked! We're being attacked! They're invading! And they can't get a clear answer about who is invading, but we know it's the Niyogi. And Gamja and Teldin are like, okay, well, these gnomes are not helping because they're talking about getting committees together to form committees to figure out how to repel these invaders. We need to take action now. So Teldin says, Gamja, you're the only warrior here. You need to take the brunt of the attack. You go to the main hall where the Niyogi are. You fight them off as best as you can. And Gamja's like, okay, you go to the stairway and make sure they don't go down the stairway so they can't get deeper down into the volcano. So Gamja goes off. We don't know what happens to him. We're following Teldin. He gets to the stairway, and there's a lake at the upper level where the ship that the gnomes were making, the Spelljammer ship, and it's called the Unquenchable, is resting. That lake, the dams have been broken. We don't know if it's the gnomes that broke the dams or valves or whether it's the Niyogi that did it, but suddenly there's this onrush of water rushing down the stairway straight at Teldin. So you have a walkway, stairways going up, and a cliff to the bottom of the volcano of Mount Nevermind, right? So Teldin's like, I'm like 30 some odd stories up. I'm going to die. And the water hits him as hard as it can possibly hit him. And he's like floundering around trying to grab anything. He ends up grabbing a rope to one of the secondary lift pulley systems that as soon as the other end of that system, which is a bucket, fills up with water, pulls him up to the top. So he's flying up to the top. He sees the pulley system at the very top where he knows he's going to run into it. So he's trying to swing his way off before he hits this pulley that's speeding down at breakneck speed. He finally jumps off the ledge, lands, rolls, and he's knocked out by the skidding and all the pain and all the damage that he's taken by the velocity that he was rushing into, hitting the brick wall, the rock wall. He wakes up and he's being carried by an Umber Hulk with a Niyogi behind him, talking about how he's going to eat him, or he's going to be a slave, or he's going to be tattooed as a slave, and how he's going to, this is basically his prisoner. And this Umber Hulk is way stronger than Teldin, so Teldin can't do anything. He's just trapped and alive now by the Niyogi. And so we have these, I think it's like a full chapter, a chapter and a half of him being a prisoner of the Niyogi, being taken to their ship and being tortured the entire time. And there's two people of the Niyogi that are arguing over whether he's going to be eaten outright or whether he's going to be a slave. Who owns him? Who's going to have, if they can find the cloak from him, because they know that he knows where the cloak is. They don't know it's the clasp around his neck. But it's the Overmaster, who's like the major captain of this entire crew, and it's the Emphi, which is the other Niyogi that's captured him. So they're arguing amongst each other. Meanwhile, Teldin is going in and out of consciousness, being tortured by these Umber Hulks the whole time. He doesn't know if he's been there 24 hours. He doesn't know if he's been there days or weeks. It's just a life of pain that he's been living. He's been seeing visions of his father and his grandfather, of his old farm buddy. He's seeing visions of Gamja. And he's just like, comes to this realization that if they get this cloak, then this pain stops. So I should just give him the cloak. And then he overhears them saying, as soon as we get the cloak, we can subjugate this and all worlds and be in total control of everything. We're just missing this cloak. And they find out the name of the cloak is Rygar's cloak. And that's as deep information we get about this cloak in this book as we'll ever get. I don't know what it means. I still don't know what the cloak does. It's just an artifact of great, immense power that everyone seems to want. So he realizes that Krynn has been through enough pain already. It just went through the War of the Lands. It went through the Blue Ladies War. So this is set right after the Legends trilogy, right after Blue Ladies War. And before Fifth Age ever happened. And he's like, Krynn's been through enough pain and suffering. My life is not that important. My life back home in my farm is not as important as saving the world. So I'm just not going to tell them where the cloak is. I'm just going to, if this is my life of torture from now on, I'm going to do my best to never say anything. He doesn't crack. He doesn't break at all. Testament to him, wildly unrealistic, but testament to him. And the torturers don't want to break his bones because his capture, Emphi, wants him as a slave. So he's like, you can torture him all you want, just don't break any bones. I need him as a slave. You break him, I can't use him as a slave. And the Overmaster wants to feed him to something called the Yurthni Maadi, which is the great old master. It's basically like the mother alien in Aliens that like gives, creates all the eggs that create all the baby aliens. It's like this behemoth of a disgusting blob, a bloated, disgusting Niyogi that is massive in size, but is filled with all the larvae of all the baby Niyogi. And he wants to feed him to them. He's like, look, here's the deal. He's not speaking under all the torture, so if we just feed him to the Niyogi, if he has the cloak, it'll save him. So we'll know where the cloak is. If he doesn't have the cloak, well, then it doesn't matter because he wouldn't tell us anyway, and he's food for our babies. Win-win. And so Emphi is like, all right, I guess if that's all we can do, that's what we're going to do. He can barely even stand. So they put him on this tall, huge pedestal, which reminded me of episode 2 of Star Wars. And at the bottom of this is this massive arena where this monstrosity of a Niyogi is just waiting, trying to eat him, because I guess they just don't feed it enough or something, which is weird because if it's sort of the thing that gives you all your babies, wouldn't you want to feed it as much as possible? Or maybe it does. I don't know. It's just this weird threat. So he can't even stand anymore. So he sort of crumples over and falls down in the arena. And then this big old monstrosity is chasing him around. He's doing his best to stay out of its way. It's crashing into walls, creating cracks. And he notices these cracks. He's like, ooh, I can escape through this if I can just stay on my feet long enough. He sees this big stick and he like jabs it into this monstrosity's gut, sort of rips it open a little bit. Little larvae start plopping out and start biting at him. This is the most terrifying moment of everything. There's this huge monstrosity above him, and he cuts into it, and little baby monstrosities that are trying to eat him plop out through this yellow ochre ooze that's everywhere. Oh, it's the worst image ever. I loved it. So he's freaking out about these little babies and this huge monstrosity. He's running around, and it's freaking out because it just got cut open, and these babies are probably going to die without, the nutrients that they were presumably getting in its body. Busts down a wall. He sees his opportunity. He runs through that hole. Eventually, the Umber Hulk and the Overmaster find him. But at the moment that they find him, and the Overmaster sends tells the Umber Hulk to go kill him, because at this point they're like, I don't want any more of this. This is too much trouble. Let's just kill this fool and take the cloak. In comes Gamja with a platoon of gnomes. He has rallied the gnomes together as a fine military force by now, and they are whipping ass. They have routed all of the Niyogi out from Mount Nevermind, pushed them out, and they're fighting their way, killing all of them on land. And they've invaded the actual spider spelljammer ship. And they've been killing all the Niyogi in the ship, too. There's something hilarious and wonderful about this weird hippopotamus humanoid leading a platoon of gnomes and their weird inventions, decimating the enemy. It was just the greatest scene ever. And so finally, you're like, at this moment, reading this book, like, he's screwed. Teldin's dead. There's nothing he can do. He's been tortured. He can't even fight. What is he going to do? And then, here comes Gamja to save the day with a bunch of wonderful, wonderful gnomes. So the Overmaster sees the gnomes and the Umber Hulk start fighting. So he's like, this is my only chance. I've got to kill this freaking fool and get this cloak and get out of here. So he charges and bites onto Teldin's arm. Teldin has a spear that he found during his wanderings outside of the arena, and he stabs the Niyogi. He eventually ends up killing the Niyogi, amazingly, and him and Gamja have this really great reunion. He's like, how did you do this? And Gamja's like, well, this is what leaders do. This is what soldiers do. We just had to rally them and give them more discipline, and they fell into line really quick. They're actually good fighters. And you're just like, yeah! So we see the gnomes immediately start dismantling the captain's chair, ostensibly is what it is, but it's like the power core generator device of the Spelljammer. It's the Spelljammer engine. So they're dismantling it from the spider ship that the Niyogi came on, and they're putting it in the unquenchable ship so that Gamja can go fly off and go off into space and whatever. At this point, Teldin's like, I have to come with you. Like, if I stay here, they're going to kill all of Krynn. They'll just keep sending more Niyogi ships in here to find me and kill more people that are connected to me and who love me, and random people. Enough gnomes have died. Enough humans have died. Enough of my neighbors have died. I have to go into space. And that's the only choice I have. We have to lure them away from Krynn for Krynn's protection. And it was this really great moment because this whole book, he hasn't given an F about anything except for getting this thing off his neck. He didn't care about Gamja. He didn't care about the casualties along the way. He was upset about his neighbor, but not to the point that he should have been. So you're sort of like, this Teldin guy's a straight up douche. Like, he should, just as a human being, just like a mortal being, you should care more about your fellow mortals than this guy is caring. And this is his moment of turning. This is the end of his character arc, where he's finally coming to a place of, the only thing I can do is own up to the situation and go to space with gnomes. At no point is that ever a good decision, but that's the only decision he has. And he's like, I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. And then another Niyogi ship comes and just hovers right above Mount Nevermind. And Teldin's talking to Gamja, like, what is that doing? It's not attacking. It's just hanging out there. He's like, it's reinforcements, and they're waiting for more. If we don't leave, they're going to decimate Krynn. And there's nothing anyone can do about it with the force that's coming. And so they hurry up and install, the gnomes hurry up and install the Spelljammer engine. They get their ship up and start leaving, and it gets captured by this main ship. But only one of the spider legs of the main Spelljammer ship got into the hull of the Unquenchable. So they go out to battle their way to try to break that cord between the two ships. And it gets to a point where Gamja's like, look, I have to go up into that ship and destroy the people in that ship, or they're going to keep sending people down here to this ship. It's the only way to stop them once and for all. We have to part. And it's this wonderful self-sacrificing moment, which is a Dragonlance trait of a storyline thing that, you know, we've gotten in every war story ever. It's just sort of a natural human reaction to insurmountable odds, and that's one person steps up and does what they don't really want to do, but they know they have to do so that the other people can survive. It's what heroes were made of. But this is his best friend at this point. This is his only friend at this point. But he doesn't want to deny him the honor that he's been striving for to go do this act, to save him, all the gnomes, all of Krynn. And so there's this beautiful moment where I'm like getting misty-eyed here, where they're saying goodbye, and Gamja leaves with a platoon of gnomes to invade the actual Niyogi ship that's holding their ship captive. They end up breaking away and going into space. They watch that ship go down, crash into Mount Nevermind. So he doesn't know if Gamja made it out alive or not. He doesn't know if he survived. And it's this wonderfully devastating moment in the novel that is filled with absurdity and frustration, but it's still at this moment of human understanding connection that I absolutely loved. So it picks up with him talking, Teldin talking to the gnomes in space, going, well, are there other gnomes up here? Like, what are you guys going to do up here? And they're like, you know, this is a science expedition. We're going to go learn stuff and, you know, experiment and create new guilds and stuff. But we can study your cloak if you want, you know, now that you're here with us. And he's like, all right, I'm just going to stay up here. And, you know, the first settlement, I'll stop. First human settlement, I'll stop and, you know, I'll try to figure out more about this cloak. And that's how the book ends. So the next book is picking up in Forgotten Realms. And so clearly, you know, they're going to end up dropping him in Forgotten Realms. And it seems like what's going to happen is that, you know, Spelljammer was made to connect the multiverse of Dungeons and Dragons worlds. And, you know, each world lives in this sphere, which, as they were describing, it sounds like a solar system or a galaxy to me. But apparently it's this crystal sphere that surrounds each Dungeons and Dragons world. And so they're traveling from the Krynn space sphere to, you know, whatever the next one's going to be, which is Forgotten Realms. I think each of these 6 books is going to go to the 6 different Dungeons and Dragons worlds. Maybe it'll end up back at Krynn. I don't know. I know that this was not a Spelljammer story. This was a Dragonlance story with Spelljammer notes dusted in. And I absolutely loved it. It provided a new perspective on Krynn that from an outsider, that I could live vicariously through, that was wonderful. It created a wonderful new story, character in Gamja, who I absolutely adore, and I want to see survive. I want to meet him again, which is the only reason why I would ever read a second book, which I have ordered. I think it's great. This is not a Spelljammer book, though. This is a Dragonlance book. And if you love Dragonlance stories and you just want one with a slightly different tone, a different take, this is definitely worth the read. The dichotomy between the races is treated really interestingly here. There's a really great friendship story and an arc of a farmer turning into a hero that was wonderfully written. I don't remember reading anything from David Zeb Cook other than D&D source books before. Maybe a short story I've read of his, but I can't think of anything right now. I loved his writing in this. I thought it was really, really good. And I had no idea where this was going to go. And I was so pleasantly surprised with where it did go and what I did experience. Because, again, I love Dragonlance, obviously. And this was a way of exploring it in a whole new way. So I highly recommend it for any Dragonlance fan. If you're a Spelljammer fan, you have to read it because it's the only novels out there for you to read. So definitely read it for that sake. Who are the characters on the cover art? Okay, so Teldin is the orange-haired guy in the front. That female that's laying down on the ground, that's the captain that dies at the very beginning of the movie. Her name is Captain Hemar. Behind her is actually Gamja, who you can't really see, the hippopotamus head blue alien. He has his pistol in the air. That's him. And those are Solinary and Lunitary, the moons behind them of Krynn. But yeah, it's just great because you get this sense of Krynn from someone who doesn't know everything about the Tower of High Sorcery or wizards. He doesn't know everything about all the Knights of Calamity. He knows what his experience was, but that was it. He doesn't know. It seems like in all of these Dragonlance stories, every single person that you find, no matter what they do in their life, knows everything. They just have all of the knowledge of all of Krynn at their fingertips. And it's very strange because no, they wouldn't. No one would. The only people that would know anything are the people that fought in the battles. Rando Cobbler in Solace would have no knowledge about anything. And yet everyone knows everything. It's a very strange thing that Dragonlance does, and arguably all fantasy always does. It was really nice and refreshing to see Zeb Cook, his nickname is Zeb, David Zeb Cook, write this with a sort of ignorant reality of people. I thought that was a brilliant move. So anyway, this is genuinely a fun novel. It's not wonderfully crafted. It has plot holes in it that don't really make sense to me. It relies on the Richard Knack fainting trope. Not as much as Kaz did, but I still think the whole fainting trope thing is kind of fucking dumb. Like, I don't know. Sorry, kind of stupid. I don't know why they do it all the time. It's just a way of moving the story along, I guess. It's frustrating. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. That's kind of all I had for this. I'm trying to look and see if I have any notes on any characters I want to bring out. I really liked Astinus of Palanthas in this because he didn't know everything, you know? Like, he only knew about spelljammers because they visited Krynn before. And that's the only knowledge he knew. So it was nice seeing an Astinus of Palanthas who didn't know everything and was not 10 steps in front of everyone else. Even though it still kind of felt like he did in the story, he admitted his own ignorance. And I really like that. Everyone saw the alien, and it was weird because it was an alien. And that should catch you strange because it's not like everyone in Calaman or every random farmer would have seen every race on Krynn before. You know? Like, they would look at, like, shadow people, and they'd be like, whoa, weird aliens! Or they'd look at Phaethons, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, it's weird angels on fire! But no, every time anyone on Krynn meets anyone else on Krynn, they're just like, oh, another race from Krynn. Hello, I knew about your species all along. No, how is that possible? How would everyone know about everything? That's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. So it's nice, at least, you know, we get this reaction with this alien who's like, well, it's an alien. Like, what are we going to do? We have to contextualize this species. No, you don't. They wouldn't know. It's okay. You can just say it's a hippo species from the swamps of Goodland. And they would be like, oh, yeah, okay, that's fine. That's believable. That's all you got to say. Is that weird to anyone else? Does that seem strange to anyone else? There's so many disparate races on this planet that no one has ever had any individual interaction with, but as soon as they meet them, they're just like, oh, it's another species here. No, you should react accordingly and be shocked and freaked out. But then when an actual alien comes, you're just like, oh, it's too much for my delicate sensibilities to handle. You have half human, half animal creatures wandering around. That's normal. You have a species who lives in the Rocky Mountain underneath the mountains who like rides worms to carve out caves. No, that's normal. You've got insect beings. No, that's normal. You got half dragon, half man. Yeah, that's normal. But a hippopotamus? Oh, I declare, that's too much. Come on. Come on. A little ridiculous. I don't know why I'm freaking out about it. It's Friday. I got nothing else to do. All right. Well, I'm going to go watch Servant with the wife. You guys have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. That is it for my review of Beyond the Moons by David Cook. As a crossover novel, do you think it sufficiently captured both Spelljammer and Dragonlance? Do you like the Dragonlance crossover series that are produced with Ravenloft and now Spelljammer? And do you enjoy the reviews that I'm putting out there? Feel free to email me at info@dragonlance or dlsaga.com. You can always comment below. I'd like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're not already. Ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. And of course, this channel is all about the Dragonlance Saga, celebrating it. And thank you for joining me in the celebration. My name's Adam. Until next time, have a great weekend. Spelljammer.